For our deep dive today, I'm titling this segment a bunch of titles. We'll figure out what we end up doing when we post it. But I wrote How My Faith Stayed. Another one is Growing Up Christian, Staying Christian, and Growing as a Christian. And the point that I'm making in this segment is someone asked me in the Telegram group, again, like, how was it for you? You grew up in a Christian family, you encounter different worldviews when you go outside. How did you stay, as a Christian? What was it about? Did your faith get rocked, basically? And I think people are aware of these stereotypes, right? The stereotypes of people who grow up Christian and then walk away from the faith and will often be very strong in denouncing the faith, like, I grew up there, I did all of that, I don't believe it anymore. And yet at the same time, there are also other people who grow up and continue in the faith that they have. Yeah, that's what I want to talk about. Like, what was it that I experienced, I saw, I witnessed, and that I practiced as well, that looking back now, I can say, okay, I'm still a follower of Jesus. And it's not just the faith of my parents, the faith of my church, my pastors. No, this is my faith. To the point that, you can, even if I wasn't in that situation anymore, it's still a faith I keep. And I think the theme throughout this is just honesty, truthfulness, and realness. It was just the real thing. And so I identified in the course of this conversation 4 factors, and all of them having to do with truth, that I can say God used to really bring it together, that I would continue in this faith. The first one is honest conversation. I'm grateful for honest conversations. And I really credit my parents for that. And some of you maybe are people in authority, mga kuya, mga ate, tito, tita, nani, tata, and all of that, for youth pastors. If you want young people to continue and grow in their faith in God, we need to open the space for honest conversations with them. If they cannot have honest conversations in the family or in the church or in the youth group, then they will go somewhere else for that. And then that is what they will grow in. That's what will disciple them, because they cannot ask questions here. And you need to open the floor to honest conversations. My dad was frank with us about sexual temptation. My dad's a pastor. He became a Christian in his middle 20s. And he said to us, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. I don't know if you will be the same. And he would always say this when we were teenagers. You might just be lions in a cage. Right now, my home is your cage. And it's keeping you from harming yourselves and harming other people with the sins of this world, because I've given you rules. I've given you boundaries. But the day will come, the cage doors will open. That's called adulthood. You're going to have to go out into the world, and unless Jesus did a transforming work in your heart, you will act like wild animals. And so he was very clear about that with us. And it made us question ourselves, like, okay, will I still go to church? Will I still believe it? Will I still read the Bible? There was one time in I think I was early 20s, my brothers were late teens, and my parents said, we're not going to church this morning. We just came from traveling. We're tired. We're going to rest. We decided to go, the 3 of us, on our way to church. We got a flat tire. We were maybe 500 meters from the church building. And we changed the tire, went back home, took a shower, went back and attended a later church service. And it was only afterwards my parents pointed out that you guys didn't have to do that, but you chose to. But it was an honest conversation is what I'm saying. We need to give young people a place to have those honest conversations. And if you are a young person growing up with a Christian background, you need to find those spaces. Where can you have these honest conversations? I'm grateful for my youth pastor. I mentioned him in an earlier segment in this episode. We were honest with him. I got to be honest with him about my struggle with pornography, my struggle with, I don't know what to do when certain situations happen in the church. And he was honest with me. And I never felt like, you're the only one with that, you're the only one with that problem. And instead, it was like, yeah, I've been there too. And finding that place was so helpful. In fact, what breaks my heart a lot of the time is talking to people whose faith is wounded or struggling, or they feel like they've lost it. When they find out, it's because they've never had that place. Just never had people they could talk to. Never had people they could be like, oh my gosh, like, am I going crazy? I want to be balindito. Ako ba nag-iisip nito? Hindi, lahat tayo. The Bible says, no temptation has seized you except what's called unto man. You're not the only one going through whatever you're going through. You're definitely not the only one. And so we need a place for honest conversations. We need people like that. And we, as the Church of God, need to be people like that for others as well. Don't overreact. Someone opens up that they have a mental health problem. Good luck. It was so hard for him to open up the first time. How much more will they open up now? When they did that, this is the response they got. Honest conversations are important. Secondly, while we're having these honest conversations, I had to be honest about my inquiry and investigation. I had to be honest. I had to face the truth about my inquiry and my investigation. What does that mean? I needed to be honest about the questions I had with the Christian faith. Why does the Bible say this? And you told me that it means this, but when I go to school, my biology teacher, my physics teacher tells me it means this. Why is it that you told me this was the interpretation, but I saw a video online that said this? I needed to be honest about those things. It would not have helped me to pretend I didn't have these problems. And I think a lot of people I've talked to who have struggled with their faith, or maybe sadly even their faith has been damaged or is not healthy, a lot of the time, these honest questions were never verbalized, but they were there. They were in the back of their mind. It was affecting their worship. It was affecting their view of the church. It was affecting their relationships. And then they unconsciously or consciously started pulling back, withdrawing. They didn't, because they were never honest that they had these problems. It just developed and developed. Be honest. And you're not going to get an answer to all of them. You won't. We have to be honest about our questions. And I'm not saying you're going to get an answer immediately, but you need to at least verbalize it. There needs to be someone in your life you can talk to about it. So I remember a number of times I asked my dad questions. She asked me, Papa, why does the Bible say this when this is happening? No, I don't know. I never thought that. That's what he would say. But just being able to tell him that, and though I wasn't dealing with it alone, helped a lot. And then that would start the journey of like looking around and being honest about it, honest inquiry investigation. But another side to the honest inquiry and investigation is to be honest about my doubts. What do I mean? Very often we don't ask our questions, we don't examine our faith, we don't know how strong it is, and then because it's unexamined, the doubt gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and we feel like because we've not examined the doubt either, we don't know how solid it is. We think, oh God, massive doubt. Oh no, my doubt is so big. There's no way the Bible could be true. No, when you honestly examine your questions, honestly look at your doubts as well and say, all right, okay, this, because there's problems with whatever worldview you absorb. Okay, all right, fine. I have a hard time, whatever, believing, I don't know, creation versus evolution or that kind of thing. If you want to talk about that, we can do that in the Telegram group. I love that topic. Or maybe I have a hard time believing that the resurrection is true. Okay, let's take the creation one. I believe that the world was formed entirely from naturalistic processes. I believe that, science did all of these things. I saw this YouTube video about the God particle, and that God particle was enough to create the world, and we didn't even need a God to create the world. To the problem with those kinds of sensationalistic things, headlines and YouTube titles, is when you watch it, they aren't talking about creation from nothing. They're talking about a God particle that exists in a vacuum with the existing laws of physics that would allow for these things to be created. It still doesn't answer the question, where did the vacuum come from? Where did the laws of physics come from? Where did that particle come from? Even if you say it pops spontaneously to exist, as like other people said, yeah, but to pop into it, it needed the space to pop into existence. They're still assuming a framework, a something, a soup for it to happen. What we're saying is that somewhere, somewhat out of time and space had to produce that. In short, both worldviews will have their questions and their problems. Be honest, not just about your criticisms or questions about the church or the Christian faith, about the other side as well. For me, for instance, that season was in college, where I was like, okay, people are saying to me that I'm only a Christian because I grew up Christian. People are saying to me that my religious experiences were socially conditioned hallucinations. All right, let's try that. Let's run that simulation. Maybe they were socially conditioned hallucinations. Okay, so that means that time I was moved to tears, that was all just, a group hallucination. Okay, is this new framework of no God, and it's all just a naturalistic worldview, is that enough to explain my world? And it wasn't. For me, one reason was because there was no basis for evil. Without God, how can I call anything evil? It was just inconvenient. Like, not having money to pay for the parking thing. That's just it. But without good, then without any real good, transcendent good, then nothing's really evil. It's just, like that. I know that lots of people believe in real evil, that lots of people have morality. And to me, it's like, yeah, even if you're not a Christian, you have a sense of morality, you have a sense of right and wrong. What is the best explanation for that? Well, that there is something as a transcendent objective good, as a transcendent objective evil. And if I'm willing to accept good and evil, that's not just genetic convenience, or societal programming, but something transcendent beyond us, that really is good in the world, then believing in God is not far from that. If you have more questions about this, we can talk about it in the Telegram group. I'm going to devote future episodes to some of these questions as well. But my point is honest inquiry and investigation. I'm honest about the questions I have, but I also conduct the investigation honestly. I don't tilt the scales in the other one's favor. And because a lot of the times people will do that, right? Oh, I have questions about the Bible, questions about this. But really, it's a smokescreen to allow me to justify the lifestyle I've already pre-decided to live. I want to be selfish. I want to do whatever I want sexually. I want to not care about other people. And because I have a question about Genesis, I have a question about the Red Sea, I'm allowed to do these things. That is not an honest investigation. That is an excuse. My dad would say to us is, just tell the truth. If you really want to sin, just sin. Just do what you want. And maybe you'll learn the hard way. And hopefully you'll repent before, doing too much damage to yourself and to other people. But don't fool yourself and say, oh, none of that works. They couldn't answer my question. There are answers. Look for them. Ask. Reach out. It's your life. It's your future. Honest conversations, honest inquiry and investigation. Thirdly, is real people. That's one of the ways that save my faith. Running into real people. One of the biggest obstacles that people have, and I've struggled with this, is just the church can be full of hypocrisy, can be full of bad. Here's what helped me with that. My dad and mom never, ever sugarcoated the reality of church to us. They were like, yup, there's bad people. There's people cheating on their wives, cheating on their husbands, abusing their kids, horrible people at work, and you'll see them on a Sunday and they'll act like nothing's wrong. Of course, they respect confidentiality. They won't tell us gory details, but they never once sugarcoated that for us. So, okay. So me finding out that people were not following Jesus was not a stumbling block. It's like, yes, I expect this. The Bible tells us this. Jesus tells us to expect this. The parable of the weeds, the parable of people who Jesus says, many of you call me Lord, Lord, right? And don't do this. In other words, faithless happen. There are lots of examples of that. But see, even if you gave me 100 examples of fakeness, as long as I need a few who are real, then I can't throw the whole thing out. Okay, that person's fake. That marriage fell apart. That person was an abuser behind the scenes. Okay, all of that. These people are real. This person really changed. This person used to be much worse, and now they've changed so much. Something happened here. I could not deny that. Real people. And see, I want to ask you, I want to challenge you even. If you're someone who's like that, who thinks, I can't believe this, all the wrong I've seen, the hypocrisy I've seen, grab it, given. I'm sorry about that. I've seen stuff like that too. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it. But what have you seen that was real? Was any of it real? Was any one of them real? Because if they were, then there's something there that's worth looking into, that we can't just discount. I found real people. That's just it. I found real people who not necessarily like me, not necessarily like me. Real people who were different. Maybe they didn't have the questions that I would have. I just experienced so many times in church. I would ask a question. Hey, does anybody else have a question about this in the Bible? And then laughter. Joe talaga, ikaw lang nag-iisip niyan. I can't believe they're not thinking of these things. This is the first thing on my mind. But even though they didn't think about the stuff or read the books that I was into, I could not deny the reality of their faith. And I think sometimes us as believers, we will judge other people by ourselves. Like I ask these questions, so I think I'm higher than others. So the Bible says knowledge puffs up, but love builds up. And so I just remember people who maybe they didn't ask the questions I asked or think about the things I thought about. But man, prayer life, grabe. I watched them go through adversity. I watched, marriages recover. I watched people lose a loved one, parents lose a child. And their faith was so strong, was so real. And they're silent, they're crying, but they're also like, this is, I cannot, I cannot discount this. This is something real. I also, through reading, and I'm grateful for Christian writers like this, I also met people like me with similar questions. Here's an excerpt from the book Soul Survivor by the author Philip Yancey. And the title of the book is Soul Survivor, How My Faith Survived the Church. And he describes himself like wrestling through his process where stuff he unlearned, that relearned, and all of these things, which things to discard, which things to keep. And he describes the examples, different Christians who, at key moments in his life, he encountered them. So even though he saw church abuse, heresy, and all of these things, he also saw real Christians. And in this chapter, it's chapter 3, and it's about G.K. Chesterton, who was a British Christian who was heavily influential in the life of C.S. Lewis. And let me read the quote Philip Yancey had. He said, at that same Bible college, however, I first encountered the writings of C.S. Lewis and G.K. Chesterton. Although separated from me by a vast expanse of sea and culture, they kindled hope that somewhere Christians existed who loosed rather than restrained their minds, who combined sophisticated taste with a humility that did not demean others, and above all, who experienced life with God as a source of joy and not repression. As soon as I read that quote, it jumped out at me, and I wanted to shout because I was like, yes, that's what I experienced growing up. I mean, I met through books and then eventually through podcasts and YouTube videos, people who lose the minds rather than restrain them, who are like, yes, let's explore science and let's explore psychology and let's explore history and let's explore it with a view of God. I mean, despite his terrible aftermath of his ministry, Ravi Zacharias, that's kind of the effect he had on me. When I was reading about this stuff and how he incorporated history and current events and literature into his messages, it made me excited. And one of the statements that he would say all the time, all truth is God's truth. It made me hunger for truth. It made me look for truth and celebrate truth where I can find it and confirm it in scripture and see those things, and like they said, Christians who combine a taste for things like deeper thinking or curiosity about the world with a humility, though. That's not like ivory towers, nuclear, looking down. And I did have a lot of those moments. My friends would tell you. But I love the writings of people like G.K. Chesterton and C.S. Lewis were very humble, just curious, happy to be there, ultimately worshiping God as the source of all these wonderful things they were discovering and creating. And finally, above all, we experience life with God as a source of joy and not repression. When I would find, myself being too restrained, they go, oh, why are you reading that? Is that not the good? Is that not the one? I found other people who celebrated those things, which strengthened their faith even more. Real people. In fact, reading that quote recently honestly helped me accelerate producing this vlog, this podcast. Because I said, you know what? He's absolutely right. These people put their thoughts out there, put pen to paper, and wrote it, and then even Mere Christianity, which wasn't even a book at first. It was a radio program. But they put it out there for people to be helped, and it helped me, a Filipino. And their thoughts are, and I said, Lord, if somehow, that became my prayer for this program, this podcast. And Lord, people out there who are asking questions, who are wondering, am I weird? Am I an aberration? Because nobody else in my church seems to be talking about this. I assure you, you're not the only one in the church, the body of Christ. There are lots of real people out here who are doing good, who really have faith in God, and it really works. Honest conversations, honest inquiry, real people, and finally, real encounters with God. All of these things I'm describing, the conversations, the community stuff, the study. Someone said to me, these are like the kindling, like the bits of wood, but you need fire. There needs to be a spark that can only come from God. You cannot produce that for yourself. You cannot create that for other people. Parents, kuyas, ates, moms, dads, youth pastors, small group leaders, we can create environments. We can, create settings where it's more likely to happen, but ultimately it has to be the work of God in a person's heart. Wrote down here, no time to get into it now, but just like milestones in my life where I just couldn't deny it. That wasn't the work of my parents making me do this or my church manipulating it. That was so far from me. It's only could be the work of God. At 11 years old, the grasp of my own sinfulness and how grateful I was Jesus would pay the price for me. 16 years old, just being in a worship service event, and like even though we before as a teenager, I was so stiff and so like awkward. And it was coming from insecurity, judgmentalist. I just couldn't be happy. I had a hard time being happy around other people who would dance and sing and just be happy because I'm like, okay, so that's sinful. That's how I would be. And because I was so awkward, I would rather just withdraw completely. I didn't know how to express myself freely. And then I can't forget it. It was a youth camp. I know the song. I'm not going to say what the song is because it might make me cry right now. But the next thing I knew, I was on my knees. And on the floor, there were drops of tears from me. I had never cried in a song before. I said, what is this? I'm not saying your experience has to be the same. It doesn't have to be emotional that way. But it does have to touch the whole person. And if you don't get that now, like I'm telling you, 11 years old, 16, 8, the next one's 18. It's like, these happened in different times, okay? It wasn't all in one in the same session, but I just cannot deny it. Okay, that's not something I would do. At 18 years old, I just understood the grace of God. My dad was talking to me about it. I just realized it's not my own doing, but He saved me. I don't deserve it. It was just, I don't know. I was taking a shower. That's all I can tell you. If you ask me the externals of what was happening there, I had a conversation with my dad. I took a shower, and I was nothing. And I was like, I have nothing to complain about. I have nothing to boast about. It was all him. Around that same time, I saw my college best friend come to know Jesus. I'd been sharing to him, and he became a Christian in a way that I could only say was totally not me. And I saw him change. And he was like, what in the world? This stuff really works. Just knowing the mission of God works. And I'm just sharing highlights with you, okay? I'm sharing like peak milestone moments, but throughout that time, there starts I'm reading the Bible, I'm going to church, I'm worshiping, I've got questions, I'm struggling with sin. All of these things, I'm going to small group meetings, and I don't know which of those things were the turning point. But like I said, those are like the kindling, the sticks that you put in, and then when the fire falls, there's something to set on fire. I'm just grateful for all of that. So anyway, I'm sharing that for any person right now who's growing up and they're testing the strength of their faith. They're feeling the strength of their faith get tested. You're running into worldviews. You're running into content online. You're going through changes personally, as you grow and mature. You're encountering obstacles in life. You're seeing the reality of how churches can be really good, but also really ugly at the same time. What do we do about that? This doesn't have to be the weakening or even the loss of your faith. This could be a strengthening of your faith. When you have honest conversations, honest inquiry and investigation, you meet real people, some like you, some not like you, and you have a real encounter with you. All right, I hope this has been helpful for you. If you want to continue this conversation, then join us in the Telegram group. I imagine there's a lot that, topics opened up, and it's helpful. If you want to talk to people around you as well, your church, your friends, and say, hey, this is what I'm going through. That's super helpful. If you want to support this channel, what we're doing, by the grace of God, I'm still able to pay for it. But that would be much appreciated. There's a link in the description on how you can do that. But we will be opening more channels soon. So please stay tuned for that. Hope you're doing well. I look forward to hearing from a lot of you. See ya.